Hey everyone, welcome to another session of VWO webinars where experts in digital marketing, experimentation, data, and product share their trade tips and inspiring stories for you to learn from. I'm Shanaz Khan, Marketing Manager at VWO. For those of you who do not know what VWO is a full funnel A/B testing, experimentation, and conversion rate optimization platform. Today we have with us Puneet Kaura, Associate Director of Product Management at VWO. Puneet has worked with companies like Supply AI, DShaw, and netmeds.com before he joined us. He has 11 years of experience up his sleeves and believes that one of the most rewarding work experience he has had was when he started his own company in 2011, which was later acquired by Nolarity in 2014. Puneet, if you could please turn on your camera so that the audience can see you. Thank you so much, Puneet, for doing this. I'm sure there'll be a plethora of insights to take back from the session. Before I pass on the microphone to you, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in from across the globe and also inform you that we will be taking up questions at the end of the session. So please feel free to drop your questions at any given point during the presentation. With that, Puneet, the stage is all yours.
I'll dive right into it. So, feature flagging your way to product success is the title, which translates to how you can use feature flagging as a tool to achieve product success. Why we are doing this? VWO has a new product called VWO FullStack, where we allow you to use feature flagging and other related features. It's been in work for a couple of years, but now we are seeing an adoption curve that is growing very fast. So that is why it is very relevant time to do this. Coming back to what we will be covering today, I have broadly divided the presentation into four major parts. The first one being why or how essentially product building has changed in the last decade. Coming to the second part, we will go through an introduction of what feature flags are, the four whys, who, what, when, where. The third part will be the elements or how you choose a feature flagging tool and how it allows product managers in the jobs they do every day. In the last, we'll have a small demo for VWO FullStack, and then we'll later open up the stage for questions. Right, we'll start now. So the first part is how we build products has changed dramatically. If there is one part where I would need all your attention it is this part, because this essentially sets the stage and has a couple of good takeaways from this presentation. Before I dive into it, I would want to talk about what product success is, the philosophy, and why it matters so much. Product success definition is pretty simple. We all come from either product marketing or product manager backgrounds, where we essentially have our areas, product with customer acquisition, customer retention, increasing growth, revenue. The definition of product success is pretty clear. I want to focus on why it matters and why it matters a lot. I believe essentially being people who develop products in the internet domain, we are in a position of supreme privilege. Most of us would agree to the fact that a lot of our product releases are not actually successes. We do not get the desired outcomes. And I would peg this number broadly at a 50%. This is a luxury that a lot of other fields cannot afford. Imagine going to a doctor where you get a good treatment 50% of the time. Imagine going to a school where only 50% of the students pass. So this is a luxury that we afford. But another aspect which makes it worthwhile is what I call the power law of product success. We are familiar with Pareto's principle, which says 20% of the efforts give you 80% of the results. This is even more skewed when it comes to web products, where I would say debatably 1% of products produce returns that are better than 99%. The biggest example of this philosophy that comes to my mind is a product like Amazon Prime. We all know Amazon launched Prime way back in 2008, and it has probably added $1 trillion of market cap to Amazon cap table. Whereas Amazon has had very big failures. The Amazon Fire phone, which costed $5 billion. So the idea I'm trying to put across is that product success, if it turns out the way that we want it to be, it will account for a lot of failures. So achieving success is more important than maybe encountering a few failures to the path to that success. Okay, I want all your attention here. This is the one slide I would want you to carry as a mental model when you leave this presentation. In 2010, when I was a freshman right after college and started building products, the cost of being wrong was far greater than the cost of being late. And this mental model has essentially flipped in 2021, where the cost of being late is far, far, far more than the cost of being wrong. Why has this happened? And why has this changed the way we build products? I could narrow it down to four broad reasons. There is some overlap in these. The first being that the execution of products has essentially been de-risked. Imagine building an e-commerce store in 2010. You had to build a shopping cart, you had to build a payment gateway, you had to build a customer communication platform, sending emails, SMSs to customers. You had to do hosting on your own. Now, if you look at these five parts, essentially we have companies like Shopify, Twilio, Stripe, AWS that have abstracted these complex parts and taken away the execution risk. So sheer number of products that are released today is more. So you have more competition. The second part is in 2010 or in the early 2010 phase, your product could have 1,000, 10,000, maybe 100,000 customers, and that was considered great. You did not have the elements of social media and virality, where a game like Pokemon Go or a Fortnite can get 10 million users on day one. Also, with the rise of social media, the feedback cycles for products have gotten way faster, an order of magnitude faster. So you can know what people are thinking about your product, both in positive and negative terms, by going to Play Store reviews, on Twitter, on other channels where customers talk about products. So the feedback is far quicker. Third point being talent density. I believe a lot of us who are attending this webinar are building our third, fourth, or maybe a fifth product. So there are existing playbooks, people have learned from their mistakes, and the number of people who can build good products has gone up by 100x. The last being, we are at the end of the beginning of the era of internet access. Back in 2010, we maybe had 150, 200 million internet users. Now we have 4 billion smartphone users. So once a product hits an inflection point, it is very hard for a product with similar philosophy to catch up. So again, I'll say this loud and clear. Right now, the cost of being late is far greater than the cost of being wrong, which essentially translates, if we need to achieve product success, one singular metric which has a high probability of determining product success is the speed at which we ship. I have found this time and again, if you are to predict the trajectory of a product being successful, you look at the shipping cadence of the team. And more often than not, this is the greatest success indicator. Moving on to how we can use feature flags as a tool to achieve faster shipping speed and get us closer to what we are calling as product success. This is a very monotonous or cliche slide. I will just go through who and what part of feature flagging. Feature flagging, the origins of the term are not known. It was championed by Martin Fowler, who is a distinguished technologist working at ThoughtWorks. They're also called feature toggles, functionality switches, feature flippers, synonyms. People use different terms in different contexts. What essentially feature flags are conditional code blocks, which change their behavior based on certain metrics without developers deploying code. And this part without deploying code is very important, as this is the enabler that takes an important time consuming part, the deployment process, out of the product feedback process, which helps the product managers do their job much faster. Now, the conditions for this conditional code logic can be basically your target audience. Maybe you are targeting customers in a particular country, geography, maybe a time frame. Imagine you are releasing certain feature for 7 days only to a certain audience. It can be a business metric where you have this discount running only for the first 100 customers. So this is what essentially feature flagging is. I would appreciate if you could put your questions in chat. If there is something that needs more elaboration, I'll be happy to do so. Otherwise, we can take these questions in the end. Now, where do we use feature flags? What are the typical use cases? Broadly, the feature flag use cases can be segmented into these four options. Canary releases, I believe the audience already knows about this term. This is when product managers ship a feature to a very pre-selected audience, maybe beta customers. As you go to a Play Store, you have a tab to enroll in beta. Whenever a new build comes up, you'll be the first ones to get access. So this is pretty standard. Another aspect of feature flags is ability to roll back and do quicker releases, or what people essentially call in today's lingo testing in production. Uh, there is a very common boxing quote that everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. The product manager version of that is everybody has a sense of what user wants to do till the product hits the users. So essentially, feature flagging is used to give users early access to a product because you have the luxury of rolling it back without involving any other members in the team. Third important use case, which VWO has been working on for the past decade and has been very successful, is A/B testing or experimentation. Imagine a SaaS product where you want to see if offering a 7-day trial versus a 14-day trial results in better LTV of customers, or maybe showing two different versions of landing page or two different versions of checkout, increase checkout or conversions. The fourth part here is feature gating or operational use cases, which is essentially giving the power of enabling and disabling certain features on and off to the operational heads. Imagine the marketing manager being able to determine till what point of time should an offer run. So ideally, this was done by the dev team, and there was collaboration between the marketing team and the dev team. But now these functions can fully reside with the operational person who is responsible for that KPI. Now, this is the basic classification of how feature toggles work. This classification is on two axes: how long these feature toggles stay in your system and how often do they change. Release toggles are the most commonly used toggles. So imagine you are releasing a feature, you do it for the first 10% of the audience. If you see that it is not affecting any other metrics, your error rate is not going up, any conversion metrics are not being affected, you increase the release to 20%, then you release generally. So these toggles are short-lived and they change frequently. Ops toggles are something I discussed in the last slide. Imagine you are a logistics manager who's responsible for controlling delivery pin codes for a particular time. Maybe there is some disturbance in that area. A first-hand instance of this is when I was working for NetMeds, there was some political conundrum due to which there was disturbance in certain pin codes, and we did not want customers to have a bad experience of ordering and then not being able to deliver in those pin codes. And getting this information was not straightforward. So we had this mechanism where the logistics manager responsible for those pin codes could get his information from the ground, from the news, and then take a subjective call of switching the delivery on and off in that region. Permission toggles are used very seldomly, and I would not advocate this as a great use case for feature flags. Essentially, these are used to give for authorization, maybe giving admin access or a certain user access. But if this access needs to exist for a long period of time, this is not a good use case for feature flags. The last being experimentation toggles. Experimentation toggles change in every request because imagine you are doing an A/B test. Every time a user comes, he might be rendered experiment version or the control version of the feature toggle. So they run. I mean, their longevity is high and they change very frequently. So essentially, in these two slides, I've captured the same essence: how and when these feature flags are used. The third aspect I would want to discuss, and I would want to get the attendees' opinion also here, is how a product manager's job is made easier by these feature flags. So following the jobs to be done framework, uh, where where the template is, if something happens, I should be able to do something, and then I can achieve something else. So if we follow this jobs to be done framework, there are three broad jobs to be done that come to my mind, which can be affected or made easier by using feature flags. I'll go through these and then probably discuss a little more uh, later in the later half of the presentation after the demo, where I would want to get your experience of how you are doing these jobs in your own companies, in your own departments. The first one is when we release software, I want to control the release process so that I can choose timing, audience of the release, and reduce release risk. Now let's double click on this. We've all had situations where an offer needs to go live or a code needs to go live on a Friday evening. It creates a tense environment because now you have a couple of days off where engineers will not be available. Uh, this is a sensitive release. The product managers and the developers are on the edge because essentially, as soon as the code is released, your users get access to it. So one very beautiful and important use case of feature flags is actually decoupling deployment and release. So the dev team, they can release once on a Friday evening or any number of times, but this release will not hit the users till the product manager decides the time is right. So the deployment can happen on Friday and the product manager can start releasing the code to customers maybe on a Monday. Another good aspect for this is usually whenever a release happens, people check for certain KPIs, metrics, and want to make sure they are not being affected adversely. With feature flags in picture, the product manager has the full authority to roll back the release without having developers to deploy again, right? So the release risk is essentially mitigated. Even if there is a bad release, it will only go out to a certain section of users, and before anything drastic happens, it will be rolled back. I have had instances where a bad product release has resulted in permanent damage, be it customers reviewing the app negatively on the App Store or starting to talk about it on Twitter and other channels. These kind of scenarios can totally be avoided. Phase rollout is again tied back to the second point where product manager can slowly increase the radius of release as and when they feel that the metrics are as expected. The second jobs to be done, which feature flag really excels at, is when we experiment with features, I want to have the ability to tweak experiments without assistance of the dev team so I can use real-time data to improve experiments. Often the experiments that product managers launch need to be modified over a period of time. It may be changing the target audience, it may be tweaking the traffic requirements. If the experiment is really going well, you can increase the traffic allocation. If there is something bad that is happening, you would want to decrease the traffic allocation. So with feature flags, the product managers have the ability to do this themselves. They are getting real-time data using this feature flagging mechanism. They can tweak traffic, change the target audience, switch off the experiment, and all this without involving the developer. So here the central theme that I'm talking again and again about is without the developer team. The developer time is getting expensive. In countries like US, an average developer hour costs around $200 to $300. So imagine if you can save this time, it actually translates into quicker product feedback plus saving a significant amount of money for the company. The third aspect or the third job to be done where feature flags excel is when we release software, I want to control operational toggles without assistance from the dev team so I can work efficiently and independently. This is purely from the perspective of ops people, not a product manager perspective. So imagine a marketing manager who wants a campaign to go live at a certain time. Usually there will be a dev team on standby to make sure this happens precisely at the time they want. And similarly for a logistics manager who's trying to control some operational aspects of the business. Now these people can be independently put in control of their functions and hence make the organization more efficient and work independently, causing less communication errors. Coming back to the buying considerations, one philosophy I want everyone who's attending this seminar to take away is even if you're not using feature flags, go back to your dev team, have a conversation about how we are handling these current use cases and how better can we do them with feature flags. If you're already using feature flags, I would want you to go back to your stakeholders, your developer team, and ask them how we can use them more effectively for maybe if you're using it for getting releases, how we can use it for experiments, how we can use them for operational purposes, and just help us ship product faster. As like any other SaaS product, feature flagging also comes in three flavors. We have seen homegrown versions where teams who realize this early and have some form of a homegrown system. With this category becoming popular, there are a lot of open source solutions that are coming up. And obviously, like VWO, there are other SaaS solutions that allow and totally take this pain away. And now it is somebody else's responsibility, and you can just plug in into our system. The four important criteria that I would evaluate when buying a feature flag system is first is the ability to target using the first party and the third party data. When I say first party data, this is essentially the data that you are capturing. Maybe if you're an e-commerce system, the frequency of buyers, the average order value, the discounts you are running. So imagine you want to only target customers who are part of your loyalty tier. This needs to be there in that feature flagging system, maybe homegrown, open source, or SaaS. Third party data is what you are capturing via analytics, your subscription software. Maybe you want to only open up certain products for people who are part of your newsletter. So this is what I essentially mean when I say targeting using first party and third party data. Second important factor is since you are using the system, which will add a small amount of overhead, this overhead needs to be negligible. There are systems like e-commerce, online travel, betting companies, where even a small adverse effect in systems performance causes a considerable drop in conversion rates. So the idea is to keep it as minimum as possible. The third and important criteria, see, the first two criteria are, or the first criteria is used is a product manager criteria. The criteria 2 and 3 essentially target the developers who are implementing the system. Developers want the system or this external system to be very easy to integrate and maintain. And they want to make sure any adverse effect on the system, maybe if you are using a VWO feature flagging system, if there is a downtime there, it doesn't result in a bad experience for your own customers. The fourth point is a little nuanced and probably not worth a great amount of discussion as of now. The feature flagging system should fit in your workflow. Even you might have APIs to switch on and off features. It should integrate with your project planning software and all the workflows that you have. So this is essentially broadly the criteria for determining what kind of feature flagging system you should go for. I will now run you through a small full stack VWO demo. So feature flagging is part of VWO full stack, which has two components, which is feature rollouts and using feature flags to do experimentation. I hope everybody can see my screen. I will also show you a small glimpse of how this integration happens. I mean, how simple it is to integrate feature flagging in your code. So imagine You have 100 customers, they already have default profiles, and now you want to roll another button in the user profile. And this is the risky proposition. It involves a change in design, and you expect that if this goes wrong, there will be significant backlash for your product. So how do you do it? What you do is you set up a feature flagging system using VWO. You essentially, so this is the VWO console. These are our various products. I go to feature rollout, and now I have set up a blue button feature. This is the one that I'm looking to launch, and I want to do it iteratively in a phased rollout. I set up the feature here. So the dev team, they can deploy this feature independently. As I told you, one primary use of feature flagging is decoupling the deployment and the release. So the dev team, they have already shipped this feature. Now, being the product manager, it is in my hands. When do I want to expose it to customers? So when I see here, this feature is already live in production. Right now, it is switched off, and I can simply switch it on and expose only 10% customers to this feature. So what essentially I'm trying to do here is, out of these 100 customers, only 10% will get this new feature. After these 10% users get this feature, I would evaluate my metrics, see if everything is in order, and then increase the release radius. So I've already done this. Let me refresh and see. So as you can see, this release toggle has randomly picked 10% of the users, and they've got the new feature. Now imagine if something adverse happens. I suddenly realize this is causing a significant performance hit, and this is giving our customers a bad experience. Without involving the developers, I can simply go to this interface and switch this feature off. Once I do that, without involving any external stakeholder, I have rolled back this feature, and now users will no longer have that bad experience. So you see, the 10% users that we had rolled this feature to, now they also don't have this available. Coming back to the implementation, I understand the audience here is product managers and product marketing managers. Integrating this kind of a workflow in your code essentially boils down to just 3 lines of code. So this is a small function that is responsible for this functionality. What I do is I set up the VWO system, I put in some SDK keys, and I simply ask for every user ID if this feature is enabled or not. If it is enabled, I display that code, otherwise I do not. So essentially, integration is a 15-minute job.
That was truly insightful. I'm sure everybody who sat through your presentation have quite a good idea of what flagging is and the process around that. Uh, so we have one question here. Uh, this question is by Abhishek Verma. When should we use an open source solution versus buying a SaaS solution for feature flagging?
Okay, interesting. So I have strong views about this. Open source solution essentially never, or let me clarify, only use an open source solution at the point where it gets prohibitively expensive to use any of the SaaS solution. Uh, I'll give you a nuanced answer here. See, we are all going towards a world of specialists where each product should do one thing very well and outsource any other non-core things. So since this is an internal product, your developers will not enjoy building this out. There will be high attrition in the team that is building out this product. You will obviously not be able to achieve the kind of finesse that a SaaS provider offers. So unless you are at a point where the cost of this solution or procuring this solution is prohibitively expensive, which is like only 1% of the companies in the world, you should never roll out your own solution or use an open source solution. You should always delegate this to a specialist.
All right. Thank you so much for answering that. We have another question by Troy Eberlane. Troy is asking, what is the best practice for handling turning off of a feature while users are in the system, especially ones who actively use the new feature or the workflow?
So essentially, the rollback only happens when there is some adverse effect of the feature. So I don't have a great answer to this. The pullback has to happen because it is providing a bad answer. Only in one context, this can be slightly bad. So imagine you are experimenting with something and users are exposed to that experiment and then you want to pull back. So companies like VWO offer sticky features. So you can enable an option if a customer has been exposed to a certain experiment, he'll continue to be part of that experiment for a period of time. In any other case, in where this feature is adversely affecting the performance or the customer experience, it has to be rolled back.
Yeah. Uh, so there's another question. There are two questions actually by Kelly Twist. Kelly's asking, first part of her question is, how do you manage removing the feature flags? And the second part of the question is, on the VWO platform, how does the full stack link to the insights tool?
Okay, I'll answer the second question first. As of now, the full stack does not link to the insight tool. So full stack product and our front end product are separate pieces, separate containers, and they do not interact with each other. There are plans to do so, but there is no defined timeline. Regarding the removing the uh, feature flags, this is a very essential element of managing the feature flag cycle. I've seen in a lot of instances where customers do not remove these feature flags, and suddenly there is a product breakdown due to one of these. So there is no good way. Essentially, as I told you, there are four kinds of feature toggles. This should be a part of your clearing of technical debt to remove the dead feature flags from your system. I do not have a great process or to propose here, but essentially do it after a certain period of time, or probably it should be the onus of the product manager to make sure that a feature that has been rolled out to everyone or an experiment that has ended is removed from the system.
The presentation was very insightful, and I'm sure everybody who attended is going to take that some actionable insights. With that, I think we can close this session today. Puneet, thank you so much for doing this with us. Have a great day, everyone.